Ethan Cole had exactly 60 seconds to decide whether humiliating himself in front of 200 strangers was worth saving a woman he'd never spoken to. The billionaire CEO, 3 tables over, Victoria Sinclair, sat frozen like ice under stage lights, her date 40 minutes late and counting. Every phone in the restaurant was angled toward her, every whisper cut deeper than the last. Ethan's hands shook as he pulled his dead grandmother's ring from his pocket. He'd sworn never to use it again after his ex-wife destroyed him, but watching Victoria's carefully blank expression crack at the edges made something crack inside him too. He stood up, walked across the marble floor, dropped to one knee in front of her table, and asked a complete stranger to marry him. If you want to see how two broken people accidentally build something real, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The restaurant was the kind of place Ethan couldn't afford, even when his marriage was still intact. Marble floors that clicked under expensive shoes, chandeliers dripping crystal like frozen rain, waiters in ties that probably cost more than his monthly coffee shop rent. He sat at table 14 with his water glass sweating rings into the white tablecloth, watching the door and hating every second of it. His sister had set this up. Rachel meant well, but her version of getting back out there involved ambushing him with blind dates at places where the appetizers had French names he couldn't pronounce. She'd texted him 3 times in the last hour. "She's really nice. Just give her a chance. Stop looking at your phone. Be present. If you bail on this, I'm telling Jamie you ate all his Halloween candy." Ethan pocketed his phone and glanced at the door again. His date was now 27 minutes late. He'd give her 10 more, then leave before the waiter came back asking if he wanted to order. The pity in that guy's eyes was already unbearable. That's when he noticed her. Victoria Sinclair sat 3 tables away near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Ethan recognized her immediately, not because he followed business news, but because it was impossible to live in this city without seeing her face on a magazine cover or a billboard. Victoria Sinclair, 30 years old, billionaire, CEO of Sinclair Industries, whatever the hell that meant. She wore a black dress that looked like it cost more than his car, her dark hair pulled back in a way that made her cheekbones look like they could cut glass. She was also very clearly being stood up. Ethan watched her check her phone for the 4th time in as many minutes. Her expression didn't change, perfectly controlled, almost bored, but her fingers tightened just slightly around the stem of her wine glass. A waiter hovered nearby, unsure whether to approach. Another couple at the next table leaned close together, whispering and glancing her direction. Someone laughed. Not at a joke. At her. Victoria heard it. Ethan saw the tiniest flinch in her shoulders, so quick he might have imagined it if he hadn't been watching. She set down her wine glass with deliberate precision and smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her dress. More phones came out. The whispers got louder. Ethan looked away. This wasn't his business. He had his own humiliation to worry about. His date still hadn't shown, and he was starting to think Rachel had made the whole thing up just to force him out of his apartment. He should leave. Pay for the water he'd been nursing for half an hour, walk out with whatever dignity he had left, and go home to his son. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Victoria sat so perfectly still, like moving even an inch would shatter her. Maybe it was the memory of sitting in his own kitchen 2 years ago, reading the text message from his ex-wife that started with, "I'm done pretending." Maybe it was just exhaustion, not from tonight, but from the months and months of watching himself barely hold together while everyone around him kept moving forward like nothing had collapsed. Ethan didn't think about what he did next. He just stood up. The walk across the restaurant felt like crossing a football field in slow motion. Every eye in the place followed him. He could feel them tracking his movement, calculating, judging. Victoria didn't notice at first. She was staring out the window at the city below, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Ethan stopped beside her table. His heart hammered so hard he thought she might hear it. "Excuse me," he said. Victoria turned. Up close, she was more intimidating than any photograph. Her eyes were the kind of blue that looked expensive, sharp, and assessing, like she could calculate your net worth and weaknesses in the same glance. But underneath the composure, Ethan saw something else, something tired, something breakable. "Yes?" Her voice was smooth and cold, professional. Ethan had no plan, no script. He was operating on pure stupid instinct now. He dropped to one knee. The entire restaurant went silent. Victoria's expression flickered. Shock, confusion, something close to panic, before snapping back to neutral. "What are you doing?" Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the ring. His grandmother's ring. White gold band, small diamond that caught the light just right. The only thing he'd kept after the divorce that still meant something. He'd been carrying it around for months like a talisman, unable to sell it or put it away for good. "Victoria Sinclair," he said, his voice steadier than it had any right to be, "will you marry me?" Her mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Around them, chairs scraped, phones lifted. Someone gasped like they were watching a reality show finale. "I know this seems insane," Ethan continued, keeping his voice low enough that only she could hear. "But in about 30 seconds, someone's going to post a video of you getting stood up, and by tomorrow morning, it'll have 10 million views. Or," he held up the ring, "they post a video of a proposal instead. Your call." Victoria stared at him, then at the ring, then back at him. For a long moment, she didn't move. Her jaw was tight, her eyes were sharp enough to cut. Then she glanced past his shoulder at the crowd watching them, and something in her expression shifted. Not softening, exactly, but calculating, weighing her options. "You're serious," she said quietly, desperately. "You don't know me. I know you didn't deserve to sit here alone while people laughed." Her breath caught, just barely, just enough. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ethan Cole." "Do you have any idea who I am?" "Yeah, the woman who's about to either say yes or throw wine in my face." A ghost of something, maybe amusement, maybe disbelief, crossed her features. She looked at the ring again. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for it. "Yes," she said. Ethan blinked. "What?" "Yes." Louder now, clearer. She took the ring from his hand and slid it onto her finger. It was too big. She closed her fist around it anyway. "I'll marry you." The restaurant exploded. Applause erupted from every direction. Someone whistled. A waiter started clapping. The couple who'd been whispering earlier jumped to their feet, cheering like they'd just witnessed the winning touchdown at the Super Bowl. Ethan stood up slowly, his knees weak. Victoria stood with him, her hand still closed around the ring. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read, something between gratitude and fury. "Play along," she murmured. Then she stepped forward, wrapped her arms around his neck, and kissed him. Ethan froze. Her lips were soft and cold and tasted faintly like wine. The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like standing in the path of an oncoming train, terrifying and unstoppable and impossible to look away from. When she pulled back, her eyes were still unreadable. "Thank you," she whispered against his ear. Then louder, turning to the crowd. "Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your support." She smiled. It looked perfect, practiced, completely hollow. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. A waiter approached with champagne they hadn't ordered, grinning like he'd personally orchestrated the whole thing. Victoria accepted a glass with flawless grace, and Ethan took one because he didn't know what else to do. "To us," Victoria said, raising her glass. Ethan clinked his against hers, his hand shaking. The champagne tasted like regret. They didn't talk until they were outside. The moment Victoria's driver pulled up, a sleek black car that probably cost more than Ethan's entire life, she grabbed Ethan's wrist and pulled him toward it. The valet opened the door. Victoria slid inside. Ethan hesitated. "Get in," she said. Not a request. He got in. The door closed behind them, sealing them into leather seats and silence. The driver pulled smoothly into traffic without asking where they were going. Victoria stared out the window, her jaw tight. The ring hung loose on her finger. "I need to know you're not insane," she said finally. "Too late for that," Ethan muttered. She turned to look at him. In the dim light of the passing streetlights, she looked younger than her magazine covers. Tired, human. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Victoria studied him for a long moment. "You do realize what you just did, right? In about 5 minutes, that video is going to be everywhere. Your face, your name. People are going to find out who you are, where you work, Where you live. I know. And you did it anyway. Yeah. She leaned back against the seat, closing her eyes. You're either the kindest person I've ever met or the dumbest. Probably both. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half exhale. It was the first real emotion he'd heard from her all night. I'm going to need your help, she said quietly. For a few weeks. Until this blows over. Help with what? Pretending this is real. She opened her eyes and looked at him. I can't have people thinking I got stood up by Marcus Chen. Do you know who he is? No. He's a tech CEO. We've been publicly linked for 3 months. If it gets out that he bailed tonight, my board will use it as ammunition to question my judgment. Again, I can't afford that right now. Ethan rubbed his face. So you want me to pretend we're engaged? For a few weeks, a month at most, just until the media moves on to the next scandal. She paused. I'll compensate you, obviously. I don't want your money. Everyone wants money. I don't. She frowned like he'd just spoken a foreign language. Then what do you want? Ethan thought about Jamie asleep at Rachel's house, about the coffee shop barely breaking even every month, about the stack of bills on his kitchen counter that kept growing no matter how many extra shifts he worked. I want my son to have a normal life, he said. That's it. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. You have a son? Yeah, Jamie. He's 5. And his mother? She left 2 years ago. Haven't heard from her since. Victoria was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I'm sorry. Don't be. We're better off. The car slowed to a stop outside a high-rise building downtown. The driver got out and opened Victoria's door. She paused before stepping out. I need an answer, Ethan. Will you help me? He should say no. Any sane person would say no, but Ethan had stopped being sane the moment he walked across that restaurant. 1 month, he said. Then we're done. Victoria nodded. 1 month. She stepped out of the car. Ethan watched her disappear into the building, the doorman greeting her like royalty. The driver got back in and glanced at Ethan in the rearview mirror. Where to, sir? Ethan gave him his address. The driver didn't react, but Ethan caught the brief flicker of surprise when they pulled up outside his apartment building 20 minutes later, a 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood where the streetlights flickered and the sidewalks needed repair. His phone buzzed the moment he stepped inside. 17 missed calls, 43 texts, every single one from Rachel. The most recent message was in all caps. Call me right now or I'm coming over, Ethan called. Rachel answered before the first ring finished. What the hell did you just do? I can explain. You proposed to Victoria Sinclair on your first date, which wasn't even your date because your actual date never showed up. Rachel, it's already on TikTok. 5 different videos. You're trending on Twitter. People are calling you the most romantic man in America. Ethan closed his eyes. Is Jamie still asleep? Rachel's voice shifted. He's fine. He doesn't know anything. But Ethan, seriously, what were you thinking? I wasn't. Clearly. He stopped. How could he explain something he didn't understand himself? She looked so alone, Rachel, and everyone was staring. I couldn't just sit there and watch. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. You're an idiot. I know. A kind idiot, but still an idiot. I know. She sighed. What happens now? I have no idea. By morning, the video had 20 million views. Ethan discovered this because his phone wouldn't stop ringing. News outlets, bloggers, random numbers calling and hanging up when he answered. He turned off his phone and walked to Rachel's apartment to pick up Jamie. His son was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas, completely oblivious to the fact that his father had accidentally become internet famous overnight. Dad! Jamie launched himself at Ethan's legs. Aunt Rachel made pancakes, but I wanted cereal instead. Good choice, buddy. Ethan picked him up, pressing his face into Jamie's messy hair. This was real, the only thing that mattered. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her phone in her hand. Have you seen any of this? No. You need to look. She handed him her phone. The screen showed a Twitter thread with hundreds of replies. The original post was a video taken from someone's table at the restaurant. Ethan watched himself walk across the floor, drop to one knee, and propose. The video ended with Victoria kissing him, her hand closed around the ring. The caption read, "This man just proposed to Victoria Sinclair after her date stood her up, and I'm not crying, you're crying." "It gets worse," Rachel said. "How?" "Someone identified you. TMZ has photos of your coffee shop. They're calling you the working-class hero who stole a billionaire's heart." Ethan set Jamie down gently. "I need to call her." "You have her number?" "No." "Then how?" His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan answered. "Mr. Cole?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Andrea Moore, Miss Sinclair's personal assistant. Miss Sinclair would like to meet with you this afternoon at 2 p.m. A car will pick you up." "I have to work. The car will pick you up at your residence at 1:30. Please be ready." The line went dead. Rachel raised her eyebrows. "Well, I think I'm in over my head." "You think?" The car that arrived at 1:30 was even more intimidating than the one from last night. The driver didn't speak. Ethan sat in the back seat watching the city transform around him. His neighborhood giving way to downtown giving way to the financial district where buildings scraped the sky, and people in suits moved like they were late for something important. They pulled up to Sinclair Tower, 70 floors of glass and steel. Ethan's reflection looked out of place in the polished lobby. Andrea Moore met him at the elevator. She was tall, blonde, and looked like she could kill someone with her clipboard. "Mr. Cole, follow me." They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, Ethan stepped into an office that could have fit his entire apartment inside it twice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Modern furniture that looked uncomfortable. A desk the size of a small car. Victoria stood by the windows with her back to him. She wore a navy suit that looked like armor. "Leave us," she said without turning around. Andrea left. The elevator doors closed. Ethan stood there awkwardly, unsure whether to sit or speak or just wait. Victoria finally turned. She looked different in daylight, still beautiful, still intimidating, but less like a photograph and more like a person who hadn't slept well. "We have a problem," she said. "Just one?" "The story's bigger than I expected. My PR team says we need to maintain the engagement for at least 2 months. Maybe longer." "That wasn't the deal." "The deal changed." She walked to her desk and picked up a tablet, swiping through screens. "You're everywhere. Late-night talk shows are making jokes. The Wall Street Journal called you America's unlikely romantic hero. My board is thrilled because our stock went up 4% this morning." "I don't care about your stock." "You should, because if we end this too quickly, it looks fake. And if it looks fake, everyone will know I got stood up, which means I look weak, which means my position as CEO becomes vulnerable." She set down the tablet. "I can't let that happen." Ethan crossed his arms. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we need rules, a contract, to protect both of us. I'll provide financial support, enough to cover your expenses and then some. In return, you attend events with me. We're seen together in public. We sell the story." She paused. "Your son is off limits. No photos, no interviews, no involving him in any of this. That's non-negotiable." Something in Ethan's chest loosened slightly. "Agreed." "Good. Because if you do anything to hurt him or exploit him for attention, I will destroy you." She said it calmly, matter-of-factly, like she was reading the weather forecast. "I would never do that," Ethan said. Victoria studied him. "I believe you." She pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. "This is the contract. Read it carefully. Sign it if you agree. If you don't, we end this now and deal with the consequences." Ethan opened the folder. 10 pages of legal language he barely understood. But the main points were clear enough. 2 months, possibly longer. Public appearances, financial compensation, complete discretion regarding Jamie. He found a pen on her desk. Signed without reading the rest. Victoria blinked. "You didn't read it." "I trust you." "You shouldn't." "Probably not." He handed the folder back. "What happens now?" Victoria took a breath. For the first time since he'd walked in, she looked uncertain. Now we figure out how to convince the world that this is real. And how do we do that? She smiled. It looked sharp enough to cut. We lie. Together. The line started immediately. Victoria's PR team scheduled their first public appearance for that same evening, a charity gala at the Grandstone Hotel where half the city's elite would be watching. Andrea handed Ethan a garment bag containing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, despite never having his measurements. When he asked how they'd managed that, Andrea just smiled and said Victoria was thorough. Ethan picked up Jamie from Rachel's at 4 and spent an hour trying to explain why he had to go out again without actually explaining anything. Is it for work? Jamie asked, building a tower with his blocks on the living room floor. Sort of. Are you going to be home for breakfast? Yeah, buddy, I promise. Jamie knocked over his tower and started rebuilding. Aunt Rachel says you're famous now. Ethan shot his sister a look. Rachel shrugged from the kitchen doorway, unapologetic. Not famous, Ethan said carefully. Just, people are talking about something I did. What did you do? I helped someone. That's good. Jamie added another block. You always say helping is good. The simplicity of it hit Ethan in the chest. His son had no idea that helping someone had turned into this. Contracts and galas, and pretending to be in love with a woman he'd known for less than 24 hours. It is good, Ethan said quietly, but sometimes good things get complicated. Why? I'm still figuring that out. The car arrived at 6. This time, Victoria was inside waiting. She wore a red dress that looked like it cost more than his annual income. Her hair swept up in a way that made her neck look impossibly long. She glanced up when he slid into the seat beside her, and for just a second, something flickered in her expression. You clean up well, she said. Thanks. You look... Ethan stopped. Every word that came to mind sounded wrong. Beautiful felt inadequate. Stunning felt like something from a movie. Nice, he finished lamely. Victoria's mouth twitched. Nice? Yeah. I spent 3 hours getting ready to look nice. Was that not enough time? She laughed. Actually laughed. A real sound, not the practiced one from the restaurant. It transformed her face completely, made her look younger and less guarded. You're either very brave or very stupid, she said. Everyone keeps telling me that. The smile faded as the car pulled up to the hotel. Cameras flashed outside like lightning trapped in bulbs. Photographers pressed against barricades, shouting names Ethan couldn't hear through the glass. This is going to be intense, Victoria said, her voice shifting back to business. Stay close to me. Don't answer any questions unless I signal you. And for the love of... She stopped herself. Just don't let go of my hand. Okay? I mean it. The second we step out of this car, we're performing. The door opened. Sound crashed over them, voices shouting, cameras clicking, questions firing like bullets. Victoria stepped out first, her posture perfect, her expression serene. She turned back and extended her hand to Ethan. He took it. Her fingers were cold. The ring, his grandmother's ring, caught the camera flashes and threw light in every direction. Victoria pulled him close as they walked, her body pressed against his side. She smiled at the cameras. Ethan tried to do the same, but his face felt frozen. Victoria, is it true you've only known him for a day? Ethan, how does it feel to be engaged to a billionaire? Are you doing this for publicity? Is the ring real? Victoria stopped walking. The crowd went silent, sensing a moment. She turned to Ethan, and her free hand came up to touch his face. It was gentle, deliberate, completely fake. We're very happy, she said, her voice carrying across the noise. That's all that matters. Then she kissed him. This time Ethan was ready for it, or he thought he was. But feeling her lips against his while 100 cameras documented, it was different than the first time. That had been shock. This was calculation. Performance. Her mouth moved against his just long enough to make it believable, and when she pulled away, she was smiling at him like he'd hung the moon. Let's go inside, she murmured. The ballroom was massive. Crystal chandeliers, marble columns, tables covered in white silk, women in gowns that cost more than cars, men in tuxedos discussing mergers and acquisitions over champagne. Ethan felt like he'd walked into a different species' habitat. Victoria kept her hand locked in his as they moved through the crowd. People approached constantly, congratulating them, asking questions, studying Ethan like he was a zoo animal that had wandered into the wrong exhibit. "Ethan, this is Margaret Chen," Victoria said at one point, introducing him to a woman wearing diamonds that could probably fund a small country. "She runs the Chen Foundation." "Pleasure," Ethan said, shaking her hand. Margaret smiled, but her eyes were calculating. "I have to say, Victoria, we were all surprised by the news. You've always been so private." "Sometimes the right person changes everything," Victoria said smoothly. "And you're a barista? Is that right?" "I own a coffee shop." "How charming." The word dripped with condescension. "You must tell me, how exactly did you two meet?" "The videos show the proposal, but not the before." Ethan felt Victoria's hand tighten on his. They hadn't discussed this part, hadn't coordinated their story beyond the basic facts. "We met at his shop," Victoria said before Ethan could answer. 3 months ago. I stopped in for coffee on my way to a meeting." Ethan turned to look at her. She met his gaze without flinching, her expression open and honest, lying like she'd been born doing it. "He made me laugh," she continued. "I don't laugh often." "I can imagine," Margaret said dryly. "And then yesterday, when my plans fell through, Ethan happened to be at the same restaurant. He saw an opportunity and took it." Victoria looked at Ethan, and something in her eyes looked almost real. "I've never met anyone braver." Margaret studied them both for a long moment. "Well, I suppose love works in mysterious ways." She drifted away. Ethan waited until she was out of earshot. 3 months? He muttered. Had to make it believable. "You could have warned me." "Where's the fun in that?" Before Ethan could respond, a man approached, tall, angular, with the kind of face that looked good in boardroom presentations. He smiled at Victoria, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "Victoria, what a surprise." Victoria's entire body went rigid. "Marcus." Ethan realized with a sinking feeling who this was. Marcus Chen, the man who'd stood her up, the reason any of this had started. "I see you've moved on quickly," Marcus said, his gaze sliding to Ethan, "and publicly." "I see you're still showing up to events uninvited," Victoria replied, her voice ice. "This is my mother's foundation." "Which makes your behavior last night even more embarrassing." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I tried to call you." 60 calls doesn't erase standing me up in front of 200 people. "I had an emergency. You had cold feet. There's a difference." The tension between them was thick enough to choke on. Ethan cleared his throat, and both of them looked at him like they'd forgotten he was standing there. "Marcus," Ethan said, extending his hand. "Ethan Cole." Marcus stared at his hand but didn't take it. "The coffee shop owner. I've heard." "Then you've heard I'm marrying her." "I've heard you proposed after knowing her for 10 minutes. Guess I'm impulsive." "Guess you're opportunistic." Victoria stepped between them. "We're leaving." "Running away?" Marcus asked. "That's not like you." "No, what's not like me is wasting time on people who aren't worth it." She turned to Ethan. "Come on." They walked away quickly, Victoria's hand gripping his so hard it hurt. She didn't slow down until they'd reached a hallway outside the ballroom, empty except for waiters hurrying past with trays of champagne. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, finally letting go of his hand. He's the one who stood you up." "Obviously." "Why would he show up here?" "Because his mother runs the foundation. Because he's arrogant enough to think I'd forgive him. Because he's—" She stopped, pressing her fingers against her temples. "It doesn't matter." "Did you love him?" Victoria looked at him sharply. "What?" "I'm just trying to understand what I walked into." She laughed, but it sounded bitter. "No, I didn't love Marcus. I tolerated him because he was useful, strategic. Our families have business connections, and dating him made sense for both companies." She paused. "I've never loved anyone. It's easier that way." Something about the way she said it made Ethan's chest ache. "That sounds lonely." "It's practical." "Those aren't opposites?" Victoria studied him with an expression he couldn't read. "You really believe that, don't you? That love is worth the risk?" "Yeah." "Even after your wife left you?" The question hit harder than Ethan expected. Jamie's worth everything that came before him. That's different. That's your son. Doesn't make it less real. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, she just looked at him, something uncertain flickering across her face. Then she straightened her shoulders and smoothed her dress. We should go back inside, she said. Do we have to? Yes. People will notice if we disappear. Let them notice. Ethan, I'm serious. You look exhausted. I'm exhausted. Let's just leave. We can't just leave. Why not? Because it looks weak. Or it looks like we'd rather be alone together. Victoria hesitated. Ethan could see her calculating, weighing the optics against whatever she was actually feeling. Finally, she nodded. Fine, but we're going out the side entrance, and you're going to kiss me in the car where the paparazzi can see. Deal. They snuck out like teenagers escaping prom. The driver pulled around without being asked, and the moment they were inside, Victoria leaned into Ethan and pressed her mouth to his. This kiss was different than the others. Less performance, more desperation. Like she needed to prove something to herself. When she pulled back, her lipstick was smudged. She looked human. Was that convincing enough? She asked quietly. Ethan's heart was racing. Yeah. Camera flashes exploded around them as the car pulled away. Victoria waved once, then sank back against the seat and closed her eyes. I hate this, she said. Which part? All of it. They drove in silence for a while. Ethan watched the city lights blur past, thinking about Jamie asleep at home, about his coffee shop that would open in 8 hours, about how his life had turned into something unrecognizable in less than 2 days. Where do you live? Victoria asked suddenly. Brooklyn. Sunset Park. I've never been there. It's not fancy. Good. I'm tired of fancy. The driver pulled up outside Ethan's building. Victoria looked out the window at the cracked sidewalk, the graffiti on the corner store, the flickering streetlight that made everything look washed out. Do you want to come up? Ethan asked, surprising himself. Victoria turned to him. Why? Because you said you're tired of fancy, and my apartment is the least fancy place in this entire city. She smiled slightly. What about your son? He's asleep at my sister's place. Won't be home until morning. For a long moment, Victoria didn't answer. Then she opened the car door. Show me. Ethan's apartment was exactly as he'd left it, cluttered but clean, filled with Jamie's drawings on the fridge and toys scattered across the living room floor. The furniture was old. The walls needed paint. The kitchen sink dripped no matter how many times he tried to fix it. Victoria stood in the middle of it all, looking completely out of place in her red gown and diamonds. It's small, Ethan said. It's real. She walked to the fridge and studied Jamie's drawings. Stick figures with too many fingers, houses with crooked roofs, a family portrait where Ethan was twice the size of everyone else. He's talented. He's 5. Everything looks like that when you're 5. No, I mean it. She touched one of the drawings gently. You can tell he's happy. The colors are bright. The people are smiling. He's a good kid. You're a good father. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He busied himself making coffee because it was the only thing he knew how to do when he felt uncomfortable. Victoria wandered around the apartment, touching things lightly, the worn couch, the stack of library books on the coffee table, the framed photo of Jamie on his first day of kindergarten. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. Make coffee? Pretend to be normal. Ethan poured 2 mugs and handed her one. You're doing fine. I kissed you 3 times tonight and felt nothing. Thanks for the confidence boost. That came out wrong. She wrapped both hands around the mug. I meant I don't know how to feel things anymore, real things. I've spent so long controlling every emotion, every reaction, that I don't remember what it's like to just be. Then stop controlling it. It's not that simple, isn't it? Victoria looked at him over the rim of her coffee. You really believe everything is that easy, don't you? No, I think most things are impossible, but being yourself shouldn't be one of them. She was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. I haven't been myself in so long, I don't know who that person is anymore. Ethan sat down on the couch. After a moment, Victoria sat beside him. careful not to wrinkle her dress. They drank their coffee in silence. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. A car alarm went off and stopped. Life continued happening around them. "Thank you," Victoria said eventually. "For what?" "For not asking me to explain myself." "You don't owe me explanations. Everyone else thinks I do." "I'm not everyone else." She turned to look at him, and for the first time since they'd met, her expression was completely open. No walls, no performance, just exhaustion and something that might have been gratitude. "No," she agreed. "You're not." Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and sighed. "Andrea wants to know where I am. Apparently we made the news again." "What did we do now?" "Left early, together. People are speculating about whether we went to a hotel." "Do they know you're in Brooklyn?" "If they did, they wouldn't believe it." She stood up, setting down her empty mug. "I should go." "Yeah." She walked to the door, then paused with her hand on the knob. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you really do it? The proposal. You said you didn't know, but you must have had a reason." Ethan thought about it. About watching her sit alone in that restaurant. About the way everyone had stared. About the feeling that had risen in his chest. Not attraction, not heroism, just recognition. He'd seen someone hurting and couldn't look away. "You reminded me of myself," he said finally. 2 years ago. Sitting in my kitchen reading a text from my wife telling me she was done. Feeling like everyone was watching me fall apart. I didn't have anyone to help me then, so when I saw you..." He trailed off. "I guess I wanted to be the person I needed back then." Victoria's eyes glistened. She blinked quickly, and the moment passed. "That's either the saddest or the kindest thing anyone's ever said to me," she said. "Can't it be both?" "With you, I'm starting to think everything is both." She left. Ethan watched from his window as she got into the car and disappeared into the night. His phone buzzed, a text from Rachel with a link to TMZ. The headline read, "Victoria Sinclair and mystery fiancé ditch charity gala for private Brooklyn rendezvous." Below it were photos of them kissing in the car, of Victoria touching his face, of them laughing together in a way that looked almost real. Ethan turned off his phone and went to bed. But sleep didn't come easy. He kept thinking about the way Victoria had looked at Jamie's drawings, the way she'd said she didn't know how to feel things anymore, the way her voice had cracked just slightly when she thanked him. This was supposed to be temporary, a performance with a clear ending. But lying there in the dark, Ethan had the uncomfortable feeling that he'd agreed to something far more complicated than either of them had planned. The next morning started with reporters outside his coffee shop. Ethan arrived at 5 to prep for opening and found 3 news vans parked across the street, cameras already recording. A woman in a blazer stood on the sidewalk doing a live report, gesturing at his storefront like it was a historical landmark. "Are you kidding me?" Ethan muttered. He unlocked the door and slipped inside before anyone could shout questions. His phone was already ringing, Rachel probably, wanting to know if he'd seen the coverage. He ignored it and started the espresso machine, letting the familiar routine ground him. By 6:30, the line outside stretched around the block. Ethan stared at it through the window. These weren't his regulars, the construction workers who came in for cheap coffee before their shifts, the college students cramming for exams, the elderly woman who ordered decaf and left exactly $1 in tips. These were people with cameras, people taking selfies in front of his shop, people who'd probably never heard of this place before yesterday. He opened the doors, the crowd surged forward. "Are you really engaged to Victoria Sinclair? How much is she paying you? Can I get a photo? Is the ring real?" Ethan held up his hands. "If you want coffee, get in line. If you want gossip, leave." Some people left. Most stayed. Ethan made drinks for 2 hours straight, barely able to keep up with orders. His assistant manager, Dev, arrived at 8 and stopped dead in the doorway. "What the hell happened?" Dev asked. "Long story." "Did you actually propose to Victoria Sinclair? Are you going to help me or interview me?" Dev tied on his apron, grinning. "Both. But they worked through the morning rush, or what should have been a rush, but turned into an all-day siege. People kept coming. The register kept ringing. By noon, Ethan had made more money than he usually did in a week. "This is insane," Dev said, wiping down the counter. "You're like a celebrity now." "I'm not a celebrity." Dude, there are literally people outside taking pictures of the building. You're a celebrity. I'm engaged to a celebrity. There's a difference. Is there? Dev paused. Wait, are you actually engaged, or is this some publicity thing? Ethan didn't answer. Dev's eyes widened. Oh my God, it's fake. Keep your voice down. How long? 2 months. And then what? Then we break up and everyone moves on. Dev leaned against the counter, processing. That's either genius or completely insane. Probably both. The bell over the door chimed. Ethan looked up, expecting another customer with a camera. Instead, Victoria walked in. She wasn't wearing a gown this time, just jeans and a white shirt and sunglasses that covered half her face. But even dressed down, she stood out like a spotlight in a dark room. Every head in the shop turned. Hi, she said, pulling off her sunglasses. Hi, Ethan replied, suddenly aware of how sweaty and disheveled he looked after 6 hours of making coffee. I wanted to see where you work. You're looking at it. Victoria glanced around at the mismatched furniture, the chipped paint, the menu board where Ethan still wrote specials in chalk because he couldn't afford a digital display. She smiled. It's perfect, she said. Someone's phone camera clicked, then another. Within seconds, half the shop was recording them. Do you want coffee? Ethan asked, trying to ignore the cameras. What do you recommend? The usual order is whatever's cheapest. Then I'll take the most expensive thing you have. That's a caramel macchiato with an extra shot. $4.50. Victoria pulled out her wallet. Ethan waved her off. On the house. I can pay. I know, but you don't have to. She studied him for a moment, then put her wallet away. Thank you. Ethan made her drink while trying not to notice that everyone in the shop was watching. When he handed it to her, their fingers brushed. Victoria held his gaze just a moment longer than necessary. It's good to see you, she said quietly. You too. She took a sip of the coffee and made a small sound of approval. This is actually good. You sound surprised. I don't usually drink coffee that costs less than $10. Must be nice. It's lonely. The words hung between them. Someone coughed. A chair scraped. The moment broke. I should let you work, Victoria said. I just wanted to, make sure you were okay. I'm fine. The reporters aren't bothering you? Not more than I can handle. Victoria nodded, but she didn't leave. She stood there holding her coffee, looking uncertain in a way that didn't match her billionaire CEO persona at all. Do you want to sit? Ethan asked. Here? Unless you have somewhere better to be. She smiled. Actually, no, I don't. She found a table in the corner. Ethan brought her a pastry he knew she wouldn't eat and went back to work, hyper-aware of her presence the entire time. Every few minutes, he'd glance over and find her watching him. Not the way the other customers were watching, hungry for gossip, but quieter. Curious. When the afternoon rush finally slowed, Ethan grabbed his own coffee and sat across from her. You've been here for 3 hours, he said. Is that a problem? No, just surprising. I like it here. It's... She searched for the word. Ordinary. Most people don't say that like it's a compliment. I'm not most people. Yeah, Ethan said. I'm starting to figure that out. Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and frowned. Andrea wants me back at the office. Apparently the board moved up our quarterly meeting. Sounds important. It is. They're going to ask about you. About us. I need to have answers ready. What are you going to tell them? That you're the best decision I've made in years. She said it lightly, but something in her expression looked serious. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. She stood collecting her things. There's an event Friday night, another gala. Can you make it? Do I have a choice? Not really, but I'm asking anyway. Ethan thought about Jamie, about the babysitter he'd have to find, about putting on another tuxedo and pretending to be someone he wasn't. He should say no, should set boundaries while he still could. I'll be there, he said. Victoria smiled, a real smile, not the practiced one she used for cameras. Thank you. She left, and the shop felt smaller somehow, emptier. Ethan watched through the window as she got into her car and drove away, disappearing back into whatever world she lived in when she wasn't slumming it in Brooklyn coffee shops. Dev appeared beside him, wiping his hands on his apron. She's different than I expected. How so? Sadder. Ethan turned to look at him. What makes you say that? I don't know. The way she looked at you, like she was trying to figure out if you were real or just another performance. Dev paused. You're in trouble, man. What do you mean? I mean, you're starting to care. And caring about someone you're supposed to be fake dating is a really good way to get your heart broken. I'm not. Yeah, you are. I've known you for 3 years. I've never seen you look at someone the way you looked at her. That's ridiculous. Is it? Ethan didn't answer. Because the truth was, he didn't know anymore. Didn't know where the performance ended and something real began. Didn't know if Victoria felt any of what he was starting to feel, or if this was all still just a transaction to her. Just be careful, Dev said. Billionaires don't end up with guys like us. That's not how the world works. Maybe it should be. Dev shook his head. You're a good guy, Ethan. Don't let her break you. That night, Ethan lay in bed scrolling through his phone. The photos from today were already everywhere. Victoria in his coffee shop, looking at him over her cup, smiling like she meant it. The headlines called them surprisingly down to earth and clearly in love. Ethan zoomed in on one photo. Victoria's expression was unguarded, caught mid-laugh at something he'd said. She looked happy. Actually, happy. He wondered if she was looking at the same photos. Wondered if she saw what he saw. Two people who were supposed to be pretending but might be forgetting to fake it. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Victoria. Andrea gave me your number. I hope that's okay. Ethan stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. It's okay. What's up? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I had a good time today. At your shop. Thank you for letting me stay. You don't need permission to be there. I feel like I need permission for everything lately. Ethan's chest tightened. He typed and deleted several responses before settling on, You don't. Not with me. The dots appeared for a long time. When her response finally came through, it was just 2 words. Thank you. Ethan set down his phone and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere across the city, Victoria was probably doing the same thing, lying in a bed that cost more than his car, looking at photos of them together, wondering what any of this meant. Dev was right. He was in trouble. But lying there in the dark, thinking about the way Victoria had smiled in his coffee shop, Ethan couldn't bring himself to care. The texts kept coming after that night. Nothing deep at first, just small observations about their days. Victoria would send him photos of terrible coffee from business meetings with captions like, This cost $12, and Ethan would respond with pictures of Jamie's latest crayon masterpiece. It felt normal, easy, like they were actually friends instead of 2 people locked into a contract. But friendship wasn't what the cameras wanted. Friday's gala was worse than the first one. More photographers, more questions, more people watching their every move like they were dissecting a science experiment. Victoria wore black this time, severe and elegant, and when Ethan arrived to pick her up, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Rough week? He asked as they settled into the car. The board is asking questions. About us. About why I'm suddenly engaged to someone with no business connections, no social standing, no strategic value. She stared out the window. They think I'm having a breakdown. Are you? She turned to look at him. I don't know anymore. The gala was at some museum Ethan had never heard of. All marble sculptures and paintings worth more than his entire bloodline. Victoria's hand found his automatically as they walked inside, her fingers lacing through his like muscle memory. They'd gotten better at this part. The touching, the proximity, the way they moved together like they'd been doing it for years instead of days. Victoria, darling. A woman in her 60s approached, dripping jewelry and condescension. How wonderful to see you looking so happy. Mrs. Whitmore, Victoria said smoothly. You remember Ethan. Of course, the coffee entrepreneur. She said it like he sold drugs. Tell me, Ethan, what exactly do you bring to this relationship besides novelty? Ethan felt Victoria stiffen beside him. He squeezed her hand. Honestly, not much, he said. No connections, no money, no idea what half the people in this room actually do for a living. He paused. but I make her laugh, and apparently that's worth something. Mrs. Whitmore's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or grudging respect. Well, how refreshingly honest. She drifted away. Victoria exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do that, she said. Do what? Defend us. You could have played along, made something up. Why would I lie? She already thinks I'm worthless. Might as well own it. Victoria stopped walking and turned to face him fully. They were standing in front of some sculpture, a twisted metal thing that probably meant something profound to someone. The lighting caught her face in a way that made her look softer. You're not worthless, she said quietly. Tell that to everyone here. I don't care what everyone here thinks. Since when? Since... She stopped. Around them, the gala continued, champagne glasses clinking, laughter echoing off marble, cameras flashing from the corners. Can we go outside? I need air. They found a balcony overlooking the garden, empty except for a couple smoking at the far end. The night air was cool enough to raise goosebumps on Victoria's bare arms. Ethan shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders without thinking. Thank you, she said, pulling it tighter. You okay? No. She leaned against the railing, staring down at the manicured hedges below. I hate this. The performance, the constant scrutiny. I thought I was good at it, but lately it just feels exhausting? Yeah. Ethan leaned beside her. So why do you do it? Because it's what's expected. My father built this company from nothing. When he died, everyone assumed I'd fail, that I was too young, too female, too emotional to run a billion-dollar empire. Her voice went hard. I've spent 10 years proving them wrong. I can't stop now. Even if it's killing you? She laughed bitterly. Especially then. The moment I show weakness, they'll tear me apart. That's not living. That's surviving. Sometimes they're the same thing. Ethan watched her profile in the dim light. She looked carved from the same marble as the museum, beautiful and untouchable and desperately alone. What do you actually want? He asked. Not what the board wants or what your father would have wanted. You. Victoria was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I want to stop being afraid. Of what? That if I'm not perfect, I'll disappear. That everyone will realize I'm just... She gestured helplessly. I'm just someone pretending to be strong enough for this. You are strong enough. You don't know that. Yeah, I do, because you're still here. Still fighting, even when it's hard. She turned to look at him, and her eyes were wet. Why are you so nice to me? I'm not being nice. I'm being honest. It's the same thing. Not even a little bit. She smiled through the tears threatening to spill. You're very strange, Ethan Cole. I get that a lot. Victoria reached up and touched his face, just her fingertips against his jaw, light as breath. It wasn't for cameras this time. There was no one watching. It was just them on a balcony in the dark, pretending to be something they weren't, except maybe they'd stopped pretending somewhere along the way. I'm glad you proposed to me, she whispered, even though it was insane. Especially because it was insane. Ethan's heart was doing something complicated in his chest. He started to say something, what? He wasn't sure, but his phone buzzed. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. He ignored it. It buzzed again. You should get that, Victoria said, stepping back. Ethan answered. Rachel, I'm kind of in the middle of... Jamie's asking for you. Rachel's voice was tight. He had a nightmare. He won't calm down. I tried everything, but he just keeps crying for his dad. Everything else disappeared. The gala, Victoria, the contract. None of it mattered. I'm coming, Ethan said. 20 minutes. He hung up. Victoria was already pulling off his jacket, handing it back. Go, she said. I'm sorry, Don't apologize. He needs you. What about the event? I'll handle it. Go be with your son. Ethan hesitated, torn between the two worlds he'd been trying to balance. Victoria pushed his jacket into his hands. Ethan, go. He went. The car ride back to Brooklyn felt endless. Ethan called Rachel twice for updates, but Jamie was still inconsolable. By the time he burst through Rachel's apartment door, His son was curled up on the couch, with tears streaming down his face. "Dad!" Jamie launched himself at Ethan, wrapping his small arms around his father's neck in a death grip. "Hey, buddy. I'm here. I've got you." Ethan sat on the couch with Jamie in his lap, rocking slightly. "What happened?" "I had a bad dream," Jamie hiccuped. "You were gone and you didn't come back." Ethan's throat tightened. "I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere." "You promise?" "I promise." Jamie buried his face in Ethan's shoulder, his breathing gradually slowing. Rachel appeared with a glass of water, looking exhausted. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "He just woke up screaming and I couldn't—" "It's okay. You did good calling me. You left the gala early. Jamie's more important." Rachel studied him for a moment. "Is everything all right? With Victoria? With all of this?" Ethan looked down at his son, now half asleep against his chest. "I don't know. Do you want it to be?" "That's a complicated question." "Not really. Either you care about her or you don't." "It's not supposed to be real, Rachel." "But it is, isn't it?" Ethan didn't answer. Jamie's weight was solid and real against him, the only thing in his life that made sense anymore. Everything else felt like standing on shifting ground. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Is he okay?" Ethan typed back one-handed. "Yeah, just scared. He's fine now. I'm glad. Tell him his dad is a good man." "I will." 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before her next message came through. "I left early too. Couldn't stay without you there." Ethan stared at those words. Couldn't stay without you. Like he was necessary. Like he mattered beyond the contract. "Where are you?" he typed. "Home. Alone." "As usual. Do you want company?" The dots appeared for so long, Ethan thought she wasn't going to respond. Then, "Yes, but you should be with Jamie. He's asleep. And my sister's here if he wakes up." "Ethan, you don't have to—" "I know, but I want to." This time the pause was even longer. Finally, "Okay." Rachel raised her eyebrows when Ethan asked if she could watch Jamie for a few more hours. "At midnight?" she said. "To go where?" "Victoria's place." "Ethan, I know what you're going to say." "Do you?" "Because I'm about to tell you that showing up at her apartment in the middle of the night is not keeping it professional." "I know. And you're going anyway." "Yeah," Rachel sighed. "Just be careful. I don't want to see you get hurt again." "I'm not going to get hurt." "That's what you said about Sarah, and look how that turned out." The name hit like a punch. Ethan hadn't let himself think about his ex-wife in months. Rachel's expression softened. "I'm sorry," she said. "That was low. I worry about you." "I know, but this is different." "How?" Ethan looked at Jamie sleeping on the couch, then at his phone with Victoria's address glowing on the screen. "I don't know yet, but it is." Victoria lived in a penthouse that took up the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca. The elevator required a key card, which she'd arranged to leave with the doorman. Ethan rode up alone, watching the numbers climb, feeling increasingly out of place in his wrinkled tuxedo. The doors opened directly into her apartment. It was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that looked like art installations, everything white and chrome and coldly perfect. Victoria stood by the windows in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked younger without all the armor, more vulnerable. "Hi," she said. "Hi. I wasn't sure you'd actually come." "I said I would." She smiled slightly. "You're very literal, aren't you?" "One of my many flaws." Victoria walked to the kitchen, a gleaming expanse of marble and stainless steel that looked like it had never been used. She pulled out 2 wine glasses and a bottle that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. "I don't really know how to do this," she said, pouring. "Have someone over, just to talk." "We've talked before. In public, with cameras watching. This is different." Ethan accepted the wine glass she offered. "How?" "Because this is real." The word hung between them. Real. Not performance, not contract, not fake engagement for the cameras, just 2 people standing in an apartment at midnight trying to figure out what they were doing. They ended up on the couch. a modern thing that looked uncomfortable but somehow wasn't. Victoria curled into the corner with her wine, her bare feet tucked under her. Outside, the city glittered like scattered diamonds. "Tell me about Sarah," Victoria said suddenly. Ethan nearly choked on his wine. "What?" "Your ex-wife. You never talk about her." "There's not much to say." "I don't believe that." Ethan set down his glass. "Why do you want to know?" "Because I want to understand what made you the way you are. And how am I?" "Kind. Even when you shouldn't be." She paused. "People aren't kind without a reason. Usually it's because they know what it's like when no one is." She was right. Too right. Ethan looked out at the city, trying to find the words. "We met in college," he said finally. She was everything I wasn't, confident, ambitious. She had this plan for her life, and somehow I became part of it. We got married young, too young probably, but I loved her. What happened? Jamie happened, and suddenly her plan didn't include being tied down with a kid and a husband who was happy running a coffee shop instead of climbing some corporate ladder. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. She tried to make it work for a few years, but one day she was done. Said she felt trapped, that she'd made a mistake, that loving me wasn't enough to want the life we'd built. Victoria's expression was unreadable. Did she ever come back? Try to see Jamie? No, she signed away her rights and moved to California. Last I heard, she's engaged to some tech executive. Ethan's voice went flat. Guess she found someone who fit her plan better. I'm sorry. Don't be. Like I said, we're better off. Are you? Ethan looked at her. What do you mean? I mean you're still carrying that ring around. Your grandmother's ring. You didn't sell it or get rid of it, you kept it. So? So maybe you're not as over it as you think you are. The observation stung because it was true. Ethan had convinced himself that keeping the ring was practical, that it might be useful someday, that it had sentimental value beyond the marriage. But the truth was simpler and more pathetic. He'd kept it because letting go of it meant admitting the failure was permanent. What about you? He asked, deflecting. No tragic love story in your past? Victoria shook her head. I've never been in love. Not really. What about Marcus? Marcus was convenient, strategic. I told you, I don't do feelings. Why not? She was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in her glass. When my father died, I was 20. The company was chaos. The board wanted to sell. I had to fight for 2 years just to keep his legacy alive. And in that time, I learned something important. Emotions make you weak. They cloud your judgment. They give people leverage against you. That's not true, isn't it? Look at you. Your ex-wife used your love for her to trap you, then walked away when it stopped serving her. Your love for Jamie makes you vulnerable. Someone could threaten him, and you'd do anything they asked. That's not weakness. That's being human. It's the same thing. Ethan set down his wine and shifted to face her fully. You really believe that? That caring about people makes you weak? I have to. Because if I start caring, if I let myself feel things, her voice cracked, I won't survive it. Maybe you're not supposed to just survive. Maybe you're supposed to actually live. I don't know how. Then learn. Victoria looked at him with something close to desperation. How? How do I unlearn 10 years of keeping everyone at arm's length? You start small. You let one person in, see what happens. And if it destroys me, then at least you'll know you were alive before it did. She stared at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she uncurled from the corner of the couch and moved closer. Not touching, but near enough that Ethan could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? That I'm starting to care about you. Actually care. Not for the cameras or the contract. Just, she gestured helplessly. You. Ethan's heart stopped. Started again, faster. Is that so terrible? He asked. Yes. Because in 6 weeks this ends. We go back to our separate lives and pretend this never happened. And I don't know if I can do that anymore. So don't. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you're... She laughed, but it sounded broken. You're you. You have a son and a coffee shop and a real life. I'm just some billionaire who needed saving from public humiliation. We exist in different worlds. So come visit mine more often. Ethan, I'm serious. You like my coffee shop. You like how normal it is. You told me that. Liking something and building a life around it are different. Are they? Victoria closed her eyes. You make everything sound so easy. Maybe because it is. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. When she opened her eyes again, they were wet. I don't want to hurt you. Then don't. What if I can't help it? What if I'm too damaged to do this right? Ethan reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, trembling slightly. You're not damaged, he said. You're just tired of being alone. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. I am, she admitted. I'm so tired. Then stop. Stop performing. Stop pretending you're fine. Just be honest. With who? With me. Victoria looked at their joined hands, then back at his face. The truth. Yeah. The truth is, I haven't stopped thinking about you since that first night. The truth is, when I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years. The truth is, her voice broke. The truth is, I'm falling for you, and it terrifies me. Ethan's chest felt too tight. He squeezed her hand. Good, he said. Good? Yeah, because I'm falling for you too, and I'm just as scared. Victoria laughed, a real laugh, wet with tears but genuine. We're a mess. Completely. This is going to end badly. Probably. So why does it feel right? Ethan didn't have an answer, or maybe he did, but it was too soon to say it out loud. That sometimes the best things were the ones that scared you. That sometimes falling was the only way to find out if someone would catch you. Instead, he pulled her closer. Victoria came willingly, tucking herself against his side like she belonged there. They sat like that for a long time, not talking, just existing in the same space. Her breathing gradually evened out, her body relaxed. Stay, she murmured against his shoulder. Just for tonight. Okay. Just sleeping, nothing else. I know. She led him to a bedroom that was somehow bigger than his entire apartment. The bed could have fit 6 people comfortably. Victoria climbed in on one side, and Ethan took the other, both of them staying carefully on their respective edges. This is weird, right? Victoria said into the darkness. Extremely. But also kind of nice? Yeah. Ethan? Yeah. Thank you for coming, for staying, for... She paused. For seeing me. Ethan rolled onto his side to face her. In the dim light from the city outside, he could just make out her silhouette. You're hard to miss, he said softly. He woke up tangled together with her. Sometime during the night, they'd gravitated toward the center of the bed, her back pressed against his chest, his arm draped over her waist. Morning light filtered through the windows, turning everything gold. Ethan froze, unsure whether to move or stay still. Victoria stirred, then went completely rigid as she realized their position. This is not professional, she mumbled. Nope. We should probably move. Probably. Neither of them moved. Victoria rolled over to face him. Her hair was a mess. She had pillow creases on her cheek. She looked beautiful. Hi, she said. Hi. This is awkward. Little bit, and she smiled. I slept really well. Me too. That's concerning. Why? Because I never sleep well, and definitely not with another person in the bed. Maybe you just needed the right person. Victoria's expression softened. She reached up and touched his face. The same gesture from the balcony, but gentler, more certain. Maybe, she agreed. Ethan's phone shattered the moment, buzzing violently on the nightstand. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. He answered. Please tell me you didn't sleep with her, Rachel said without preamble. Good morning to you too. Ethan. I didn't sleep with her. I slept near her. There's a difference. That's not better. Jamie okay? Jamie's fine. He's eating pancakes and watching cartoons. You, however, are not fine. Have you seen the news? Something in her tone made Ethan's stomach drop. What news? Someone photographed you going into Victoria's building last night. TMZ is running with Billionaire's new fiancé sneaks into her penthouse after midnight. The comments are, well, they're not great. Ethan sat up. Beside him, Victoria did the same, mouthing, "What's wrong?" "How bad?" Ethan asked. "People are saying you're using her, that you left your kid to sleep with a rich woman, that the whole thing is a scam." Rachel paused. "And Ethan?" Sarah saw it. Everything stopped. "What?" "Your ex-wife. She called me this morning. She wants to talk to you." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "About what?" "She didn't say, but she's in New York. She's coming to the coffee shop today at 2. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone, his mind racing. Victoria touched his arm. "What happened?" "My ex-wife saw the photos. She's here, in New York. She wants to meet." Victoria's expression went carefully neutral. "Why?" "I don't know. She hasn't tried to contact me in 2 years. Maybe she's concerned about Jamie. She signed away her rights. She has no claim to him. That doesn't mean she stopped caring." Ethan stood up, pacing. "This is bad. If she starts talking to the press, if she says I'm an unfit father or that I'm exploiting you, she won't." "You don't know that." "No, but I know you. And anyone who actually knows you would never believe you're capable of exploiting anyone." Victoria got out of bed, crossing to him. "We'll handle this. Together." "This isn't your problem." "Yes, it is. We're in this together, remember? That was the deal." Ethan looked at her, standing there in her pajamas with her messy hair, looking at him like he was worth defending. Something shifted in his chest. "Okay," he said. "Together." Victoria smiled. Then her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her expression shuddered. "I have to take this," she said, walking to the living room. Ethan heard her voice through the door, sharp and professional, nothing like the soft tone from moments before. He got dressed quickly, trying not to think about the fact that his entire life was about to implode. Sarah was here. Sarah wanted to talk, and nothing about that could be good. Victoria emerged from the living room looking grim. "That was my lawyer," she said. "Someone leaked our contract to the press." Ethan's blood went cold. "What?" "Not the details, just that there is a contract. People are asking questions, demanding to see it, calling the engagement a publicity stunt." "Isn't it?" "Not anymore." She said it so quietly he almost missed it. They stared at each other across the expanse of her perfect apartment. Two people who'd stumbled into something neither of them planned for, now watching it fall apart in real time. "What do we do?" Ethan asked. Victoria straightened her shoulders, and he watched her become the CEO again. The woman who faced down boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions without flinching. "We fight," she said, "for this. For us. Whatever that means." "Even if it costs you everything?" "Even then." Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel. "Sarah's here early. She's waiting at the shop." He showed Victoria the message. She read it and nodded. "Go," she said. "Handle this. I'll deal with the press on my end." "Victoria, we're not done, Ethan. This doesn't end unless we let it." He wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that two people from completely different worlds could somehow make this work. But standing there watching her armor herself against the world again, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to lose something they'd barely had the chance to understand. "I'll call you," he said. "You better." He left. The elevator ride down felt like descending into cold water. By the time he reached the street, photographers were already gathering. Someone shouted his name. Cameras flashed. Ethan kept his head down and pushed through to the waiting car. The drive to Brooklyn felt endless. His mind kept circling back to one question. Why now? After 2 years of silence, why would Sarah suddenly resurface? Nothing about this felt coincidental. The coffee shop was quiet when he arrived. Too early for the lunch rush, too late for the morning crowd. And there, sitting at a corner table with a cup she hadn't touched, was the woman he'd promised to love forever. Sarah looked exactly the same. Blonde hair, sharp features, the kind of beauty that photographed well. She stood when she saw him, her expression unreadable. "Hi, Ethan," she said. "Sarah." His voice came out flat. Why are you here? I saw the news about you and her, Victoria Sinclair. So? So I needed to see if it was real. Why do you care? Sarah flinched. Can we sit, please? Every instinct told Ethan to walk away, but curiosity won. He sat across from her, his jaw tight. Talk, he said. Sarah took a breath. I made a mistake. Leaving you, leaving Jamie. I thought I needed freedom, needed to find myself, needed… She laughed bitterly. I don't even know what I thought I needed, but I was wrong. Ethan stared at her. You're 2 years too late. I know, but when I saw those photos of you with her, looking so happy, her voice cracked. I realized I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me. You can't be serious. I am. Ethan, I want to try again. I want to be a mother to Jamie. I want… Stop. Ethan's hands were shaking. You don't get to do this. You don't get to walk away from us and then come back when it's convenient. I know I hurt you. You destroyed me. You left your son without looking back. And now, what? You're jealous because I might be happy with someone else? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm not jealous. I'm desperate. I've spent 2 years trying to convince myself I made the right choice, and I can't anymore. Please, Ethan, just give me a chance to make this right. Ethan stood up so fast his chair scraped across the floor. No, Jamie doesn't need a mother who abandoned him, and I don't need a wife who only wants me back because she can't stand seeing me move on. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, you showed up the minute my life got complicated. That's not love, Sarah, that's ego. She stood too, reaching for his hand. He pulled away. I'm sorry, she said, for everything. But don't you think Jamie deserves… Don't. Ethan's voice went dangerous. Don't you dare use my son as leverage. You lost that right when you signed those papers. Sarah's face crumpled. I was scared. I was 24 and overwhelmed, and I made a terrible choice. But people can change, Ethan. People can grow. Then I'm happy for you. Go grow somewhere else. He walked away. Sarah called after him, but he didn't turn around. His hands were still shaking when he got outside. The photographers had multiplied, cameras clicking like locusts. Ethan, was that your ex-wife? Are you cheating on Victoria? Is the engagement over? Ethan ignored them all and called Victoria. She answered on the first ring. How bad? She asked. She wants me back. Says she made a mistake. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What did you tell her? That it's too late. That she doesn't get to just walk back into our lives. Good. The press saw her. They're going to make this into something it's not. Let them. We know the truth. Do we? Ethan's voice cracked. Because right now, I don't know what's real anymore. This thing between us, it started as a lie, Victoria. How do we know it's not still one? Because I'm terrified of losing you. She said it simply, directly. And I've never been terrified of losing anything before. Ethan closed his eyes. Around him, the cameras kept clicking. The questions kept coming, but all he could hear was Victoria's voice, raw and honest in a way he'd never heard before. I'm terrified too, he admitted. Then we're even. Despite everything, the chaos, the press, the ex-wife who'd just detonated his life, Ethan smiled. What now? He asked. Now we stop running, we stop pretending, and we figure out if this thing between us can survive being real. And if it can't, then at least we'll know we tried. Ethan looked up at the photographers still shouting questions, at the coffee shop where his normal life used to exist, at the city where somewhere Victoria was standing in her penthouse waiting for him to decide whether to keep falling or pull back while he still could. Okay, he said, let's try. But trying turned out to be harder than either of them expected. The leaked contract story exploded overnight. By Monday morning, every news outlet from tabloids to business journals was running speculation pieces. The most popular theory was that Victoria had paid Ethan to fake the engagement for publicity, and now that it was exposed, the whole thing would collapse. The board called an emergency meeting. Ethan's coffee shop got vandalized. Someone spray-painted "Gold Digger" across the front window in red letters 3 feet tall. Ethan stood outside at 6 in the morning, staring at the damage while Dev called the police. His phone had been ringing nonstop since sunrise. Reporters, bloggers, random numbers he didn't recognize. He turned it off after the 15th call. "This is bad," Dev said, hanging up. "Cops said they'll send someone, but it'll be a few hours." "Great. You want me to call Victoria? Her people might be able to—" "No." Ethan's voice came out sharper than intended. "Sorry, I need to handle this myself." Dev studied him. "You know this isn't your fault, right?" "Feels like it is." "Well, it's not. Some asshole with a spray can doesn't get to define you." Ethan managed a weak smile. "When did you become the wise one?" "I've always been wise. You just never listened." Dev clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, let's clean this up before anyone else sees it." They spent 2 hours scrubbing paint off the window. It didn't all come off. The red left ghostly streaks across the glass like claw marks. Ethan was still on his knees with a rag when a black car pulled up. Victoria stepped out wearing a blazer and jeans, her hair pulled back, sunglasses covering half her face. She looked at the window, then at Ethan. "I'm sorry," she said. "Not your fault." "Isn't it?" She pulled off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "This is what happens when my world touches yours. It destroys things. It's just paint. It's not just paint. It's your livelihood, your reputation, your safety." Her voice cracked. "I did this to you." Ethan stood up, dropping the rag. "You didn't spray paint my window." "I might as well have." "Victoria, I should end this. The engagement, the contract, all of it, before it gets worse." The words hit like a physical blow. Ethan took a step toward her. "Is that what you want?" he asked quietly. "What I want doesn't matter. This is hurting you, hurting Jamie. Jamie doesn't know about any of this, and I can handle paint. What about when it's not paint? What about when someone decides to do more than vandalize? What about when—" She stopped, pressing her fingers against her temples. "I've been getting threats. Letters, emails, people saying I'm corrupting you, using you, destroying your life for my own gain." Ethan's blood went cold. "What kind of threats?" "The usual. That I'm a manipulative witch who deserves to be alone. That you're a fool for trusting me. That we both deserve whatever's coming to us." She laughed bitterly. "They're not wrong." "Yes, they are." "Ethan, be realistic. We've known each other for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And in that time, your life has become a circus. Your ex-wife came back. Your shop got vandalized. You're getting harassed by photographers every time you leave your apartment. How is any of this worth it?" "Because I care about you." The words hung between them. Victoria's expression crumpled. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because it makes this harder." "Good. It should be hard. Anything worth having is hard." Victoria shook her head, tears spilling over. "You don't understand. My board met this morning. They're threatening a vote of no confidence. They say this scandal is affecting the company's reputation, that I'm too distracted to lead effectively. If I don't end this publicly, decisively, they're going to force me out." Ethan felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. "Your company is threatening you?" "My father's company. The one thing I've spent 10 years protecting. And I'm going to lose it because I couldn't keep my personal life from becoming a disaster." "So that's it? They issue an ultimatum and you just give up?" "It's not giving up. It's being practical. It's being afraid." Victoria's eyes flashed. "You don't get to judge me for protecting what's mine." "I'm not judging you. I'm asking you to fight for us the way you fight for that company." "Us?" She laughed, harsh and broken. "There is no us, Ethan. There's a contract that's about to expire and 2 people who were stupid enough to catch feelings in the meantime. That's all this is." The words cut deep. Ethan took a step back. "If that's what you believe, then go," he said quietly. "End it. Tell your board you made a mistake. Tell the press it was all fake. Walk away." "Ethan, but don't stand here and tell me this doesn't matter. Don't insult both of us by pretending the last 2 weeks meant nothing." Victoria stared at him, tears streaming down her face. "What do you want from me?" "The truth. Do you care about me or not?" "Of course I care about you. That's the problem." How is that a problem? Because caring about you means watching you get hurt because of me. It means watching Jamie grow up with photographers following him to school. It means choosing between you and everything I've worked for, and I don't know how to make that choice. Ethan's throat tightened. Then I'll make it for you. Choose the company. I'm not going to be the reason you lose your father's legacy. That's not fair. None of this is fair, but I'm not going to let you destroy yourself for me. Victoria covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Ethan wanted to reach for her, to pull her close and tell her they'd figure it out. But the space between them felt like a chasm neither of them knew how to cross. I don't know what to do, she said through her tears. I don't know how to choose. Before Ethan could answer, his phone buzzed. He turned it back on while they were talking. Rachel's name flashed on the screen with a message that made his heart stop. Sarah's lawyer just called. She's filing for joint custody of Jamie. Everything else disappeared. I have to go, Ethan said, his voice hollow. Victoria looked up. What happened? Sarah's trying to take Jamie. What? Her lawyer called Rachel. She's filing for custody, claiming I'm an unfit father because of all this. The engagement, the media attention, leaving him with Rachel while I run around with you. His hands were shaking. She's using us against me. Victoria went pale. No, she can't do that. She can, and she is. Ethan backed toward his car. I need to call a lawyer. I don't know what I need to do. Ethan, wait. You were right. He said it flatly, like stating a fact. This is destroying my life, so yeah, end it. Tell everyone it was fake. Maybe if we're not together, she'll drop the case. You don't mean that. I mean I can't lose my son, Victoria. He's all I have. So if ending this protects him, then it's already over. He got in his car and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Victoria stood alone on the sidewalk, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. The lawyer Rachel found was named Daniel Park, and he looked exhausted before Ethan even sat down. They met in a cramped office in Queens where the air conditioning didn't work and the wallpaper was peeling. Let me be straight with you, Daniel said, flipping through papers. Your ex-wife has a case, not a great one, but not nothing either. She's claiming you've exposed your son to an unstable environment, specifically a fake relationship with a public figure that's subjected him to media scrutiny and emotional distress. Jamie doesn't even know about Victoria, Ethan said. He's 5. He doesn't watch the news. Doesn't matter. Her argument is that your judgment is compromised, that you're prioritizing this relationship over his well-being. She's got photos of you leaving your sister's apartment at midnight to go to Victoria's penthouse. She's got tabloid articles about the vandalism. She's building a narrative. Of me as what? A bad father? As someone whose life has become chaotic and potentially unsafe for a child. Ethan's stomach turned. That's insane. I've never put Jamie at risk. I believe you, but in family court, perception matters as much as reality. Daniel leaned back. Here's what we do. You end the engagement immediately, publicly. You release a statement saying it was a mutual decision, that you're focusing on your son, that your priority is always his well-being. We demonstrate stability, routine, consistency, no more public drama. And if I don't want to end it? Daniel looked at him like he'd suggested jumping off a bridge. Then you're handing her ammunition. Every photo, every headline, every public appearance becomes evidence that you're more interested in your celebrity girlfriend than your kid. She's not... Ethan stopped. What was Victoria? Not his girlfriend. Not really his fiancée. Not just a contract. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. Fast. Ethan left the office feeling hollow. His phone buzzed constantly. Texts from Rachel asking for updates. Missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. News alerts about the custody filing that had somehow already leaked to TMZ. The headline read, Coffee shop owner's ex-wife fights for son amid billionaire romance scandal. He turned off his phone again and drove to pick up Jamie from Rachel's place. His son ran to him the moment he walked in, wrapping his arms around Ethan's legs. Dad, I made you a picture at school. Ethan crouched down, pulling Jamie into a hug so tight the boy squeaked. Let me see. Jamie held up a crayon drawing, stick figures labeled me and Dad, standing in front of what might have been the coffee shop. The sky was blue. The son had a smiling face. Everything in Jamie's world was still simple and good and safe. "It's perfect, buddy," Ethan said, his voice rough. Rachel appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. "Did you talk to the lawyer?" "Yeah." "And?" "He says I need to end things with Victoria." "Are you going to?" Ethan looked at Jamie, who'd already moved on to building something with blocks on the floor. His son. The only thing that had ever mattered more than his own broken heart. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Ethan, if Sarah takes him, she won't. I won't let her." "Then you know what you have to do." He did. Rachel was right. The lawyer was right. The logical choice was obvious. End the engagement, prove his life was stable, fight Sarah in court without the distraction of a fake relationship that had become too real. It was the smart thing to do, the only thing to do. So why did it feel like cutting off his own arm? Victoria called that night. Ethan stared at her name on the screen for 3 rings before answering. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Her voice sounded wrecked. "Are you okay?" "No." "Me neither." They sat in silence for a moment, neither knowing what to say. "I talked to my lawyer," Victoria said finally. "He says if I release a statement ending the engagement and admitting it was staged for publicity, it might help your custody case. Takes away Sarah's ammunition." "You'd do that?" "Of course I would. Ethan, if my company versus your son is the choice, there's no choice. You keep Jamie. I'll deal with my board." Something in Ethan's chest cracked. "You'd give up everything you've worked for?" "In a heartbeat." "Victoria, I mean it. I don't care about the company. Not really. My father's legacy, the board's approval, the stock price, none of it matters compared to making sure you don't lose your son because of me." Ethan closed his eyes. "That's the kindest thing anyone's ever offered me." But I can't let you do it. You'd resent me eventually. You'd wake up one day and realize you sacrificed everything for someone you barely know, and you'd hate me for it." "I wouldn't." "You would. Maybe not today, maybe not next year, but eventually." His voice dropped. "And I couldn't handle watching you realize I wasn't worth it." Victoria was quiet for so long Ethan thought she'd hung up. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What if you are worth it?" "I'm not." "How do you know?" "Because I'm just me, Victoria. A guy who makes coffee and raises his kid and has nothing to offer you except complicated feelings and a life that's falling apart. You're everything. And I'm asking you to give up everything for nothing. You're not nothing. To your world, I am. My world is wrong." Ethan laughed, but it hurt. "Doesn't make it less real." Another silence stretched between them. Outside Ethan's window, the city hummed with its usual noise, sirens and car horns and life, continuing like hearts weren't breaking in small apartments all over Brooklyn. "So what do we do?" Victoria asked. "We do what we should have done from the start. We end this before anyone else gets hurt." "Ethan, I need to focus on Jamie. You need to save your company. This was always temporary anyway. We just forgot that for a while." "I don't want to forget." Her voice cracked. "I don't want to go back to before I knew you. We don't have a choice." "We always have a choice." "Not this time." Victoria made a sound that might have been a sob. "I hate this." "Me too." "Will you?" She stopped, started again. "Will you at least let me see you one more time, before we end it officially?" Every instinct screamed at Ethan to say no. Clean breaks were easier. Dragging it out would only make it worse, but he couldn't help himself. "Yeah," he said. "One more time." They met the next evening at the coffee shop after Ethan closed. He'd spent the afternoon scrubbing away the last traces of red paint, trying to make the place look normal again. When Victoria arrived, she looked like she'd been crying for hours. Her face was bare of makeup, her eyes swollen. She wore jeans and an old sweater and looked more human than he'd ever seen her. "Hi," she said. "Hi." They stood there awkwardly, neither knowing how to start. Finally, Victoria walked to the counter and sat on one of the stools. "Make me something," she said. Whatever you want. One last coffee." Ethan moved behind the espresso machine, grateful for something to do with his hands. He made her a cappuccino with a heart in the foam, the kind he used to make when he was first learning latte art, when he still believed making perfect hearts in coffee meant something. Victoria cradled the cup in both hands, staring at the heart like it might disappear. "I don't know how to say goodbye to you," she said quietly. "We knew this was temporary." Knowing something and feeling it are different. Ethan leaned against the counter. "What do you want me to say, Victoria? That I'm going to wake up tomorrow and be fine? That this didn't mean anything?" "No. I want you to say it meant everything." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "I want you to say you fell for me too, that I'm not alone in this." "You're not alone." "Then why does it feel like I am?" "Because we can't have this. Not in any real way. Your world and mine, they don't fit together." "They could if we let them." "At what cost? You lose your company. I lose my son. We destroy everything trying to make something work that was never supposed to be real." Ethan's voice broke. "I can't do that. I can't watch you give up your life for me. What if I want to? Then I need to be strong enough to stop you." Victoria set down her cup. She stood up and walked around the counter until she was standing right in front of him. Then she reached up and touched his face, the gesture that had become theirs, the one that always made his heart stop. "I love you," she said. The world tilted. "Victoria, I know I shouldn't. I know it's too soon and too complicated and too impossible. But I love you, Ethan Cole, and I need you to know that before we end this." Ethan's hands came up to cradle her face. "I love you too." She smiled through her tears. "Then why are we doing this?" "Because love isn't always enough. It should be, but it's not." Victoria kissed him. It was desperate and messy and tasted like salt and heartbreak. Ethan kissed her back like he could memorize the feeling, like he could keep this moment frozen forever so he'd have something to hold on to when she was gone. When they finally pulled apart, they were both crying. "I don't know how to let you go," Victoria whispered. "Me neither." But they did. Victoria left first, walking out the door without looking back because if she looked back, she'd never leave. Ethan watched her car drive away until the taillights disappeared, then locked up the shop and sat alone in the dark, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so fast. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Sarah. We need to talk. About Jamie. About us. Please." Ethan stared at the message. Then he did something he never thought he'd do. He responded. "Okay, when?" "Tomorrow. My hotel. Noon." "Fine." He set down his phone and pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. In the span of 2 weeks, he'd proposed to a stranger, fallen in love with her, and lost her. And now he was going to meet with the woman who'd destroyed him the first time to discuss why she should be allowed back into his life. Nothing about any of this made sense, but maybe that was the point. Maybe love wasn't supposed to make sense. Maybe it was just supposed to hurt like hell until you figured out whether it was worth fighting for. The hotel where Sarah was staying was in Midtown, expensive but not ostentatious, the kind of place business travelers preferred. She answered the door in yoga pants and a t-shirt, looking nervous. "Thanks for coming," she said. Ethan didn't move from the doorway. "You've got 10 minutes. Can you at least come inside?" "No, say what you need to say." Sarah's face fell, but she nodded. "Okay, I'm dropping the custody case." Ethan blinked. "What?" "I'm dropping it. I talked to my lawyer this morning and told him to withdraw the filing." "Why?" "Because I was wrong about everything." Sarah wrapped her arms around herself. "I saw those photos of you and Victoria, and I convinced myself you were making a mistake, that you were being reckless, that Jamie deserved better. But the truth is," her voice cracked, "the truth is I was jealous. Jealous of her, of the way you looked at her. You never looked at me like that, not even in the beginning." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You left me, Sarah. You gave up any right to be jealous." "I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm trying to be honest." She wiped her eyes. I made a terrible mistake leaving you and Jamie. I thought I wanted freedom, but all I found was loneliness. And when I saw you with her looking so happy, I couldn't stand it. So I tried to ruin it by threatening to take my son. I was never going to take him. I wanted to hurt you the way I was hurting, which makes me a terrible person, I know. Ethan stared at her, trying to process. So that's it? You're just dropping the case and leaving? I'm dropping the case, but I'm not leaving. Not yet. Sarah took a breath. I want to meet Jamie just once, just to see him, to tell him I'm sorry for not being there. Absolutely not. Ethan, you don't get to waltz back into his life after 2 years. He doesn't even remember you. I know, and maybe that's better. Maybe he's better off without me. But I need... Her voice broke completely. I need to see him, just to know he's okay. That you did better without me than you ever did with me. Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to slam the door and never look back. But looking at Sarah, really looking at her, he saw something familiar. The same brokenness he'd seen in Victoria's eyes. The same desperate loneliness. 1 meeting, he said. Supervised. At a park. 30 minutes. Sarah's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. And Sarah, if you hurt him, if you make him think you're coming back and then disappear again, I will make sure you regret it. I won't. I promise. Ethan turned to leave. Sarah called after him. For what it's worth. She's good for you. Victoria, I've never seen you look that alive. He didn't respond, just walked away and tried to figure out how he was supposed to explain any of this to his 5-year-old son. The meeting with Sarah happened 3 days later in Prospect Park. Rachel came as a buffer, and Jamie was confused but excited about meeting Dad's old friend. Sarah cried the moment she saw him. Jamie, bewildered by this stranger's tears, offered her a dandelion he'd picked. Don't be sad, he said. Flowers make everyone happy. Sarah took the dandelion like it was made of gold. Thank you, sweetheart. They spent 20 minutes watching Jamie play on the swings. Sarah asked careful questions. What was his favorite color? Did he like school? What did he want to be when he grew up? Jamie answered with the easy honesty of children who don't yet know how to guard themselves. When it was time to go, Sarah hugged Jamie briefly. You're a wonderful boy, she said. Your dad is very lucky. Jamie beamed. He's the best dad in the world. Sarah looked at Ethan over Jamie's head, her eyes full of regret and something that might have been pride. Yeah, he is. She left after that. Ethan watched her get into a cab and he felt something release in his chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of letting go. Who was that lady? Jamie asked on the walk home. Ethan crouched down to his son's level. Someone who knew me a long time ago. She seemed sad. She is, but she'll be okay. Like you? Then paused. What do you mean? You've been sad too, since Victoria stopped coming around. Ethan's heart clenched. You notice that? You don't smile as much, and you check your phone all the time like you're waiting for something. Jamie tilted his head. Do you miss her? Yeah, buddy, I do. Then why don't you see her anymore? It's complicated. Is it because of me? No, never because of you. Jamie thought about this. Then he took Ethan's hand and said something that broke him. If she makes you smile, you should tell her. People should tell each other when they make them happy. Out of the mouths of children. Ethan pulled his son into a hug and decided right then what he needed to do. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and wrote a text to Victoria. He deleted it, wrote another, deleted that too. Finally, he just called. She answered on the first ring. Ethan? I made a mistake, he said. What? Letting you go, telling you we couldn't make this work. I was wrong. Victoria's breath caught. What changed? My 5-year-old son just reminded me that people should tell each other when they make them happy. And you... His voice broke. You make me happier than I've been in years. Maybe ever. And I don't want to lose that because I'm afraid. What about Jamie, the custody case? Sarah dropped it. She's leaving. What about my company? The board? I don't know, but I know I love you, and I know I want to fight for us instead of running away. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with tears. "I quit," she said. "What?" "I quit the company. Handed in my resignation this afternoon, effective immediately." Ethan's heart stopped. "Victoria, no, you can't." "I can. And I did. Because you were right. I was going to resent you if I gave it up for you. But then I realized something. I didn't want the company anymore. I haven't wanted it for years. I've just been too afraid to admit that my father's dream isn't mine. What do you want?" "I want to figure that out. For the first time in my life, I want to make my own choices. And my first choice," her voice softened, "my first choice is you." Ethan couldn't breathe. "Are you sure?" Terrified, but sure. "Victoria, I love you, Ethan, and I'm tired of being afraid of that." "I love you too." "So what now?" Ethan looked around his tiny kitchen with its dripping sink and peeling linoleum. He thought about his coffee shop with its mismatched furniture and chipped paint. He thought about his life, small and ordinary, and nothing like the world Victoria came from. "Now you come over," he said. "We'll figure out the rest together." "I'm already in the car." She showed up 20 minutes later, still wearing pajamas under her coat. Ethan opened the door, and she walked straight into his arms. They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the narrow doorway, neither ready to let go. "I don't know how to do this," Victoria whispered against his chest. "Do what?" "Be normal. Be with someone without a contract or a plan or a strategy. Then we'll learn together. What if we're bad at it? Then we'll be bad at it together." She pulled back to look at him. Her makeup was smudged, her hair was a mess, and she looked more beautiful than any polished version of herself ever had. "I really love you," she said. "I really love you too." They kissed in the doorway like teenagers who'd just discovered what love felt like, messy and desperate and achingly real. And for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt like maybe they actually had a chance. Not because it was easy, not because it made sense, but because they'd both finally stopped running. The problem with choosing love over logic, Ethan discovered, was that logic didn't stop existing just because you decided to ignore it. Victoria moved into his apartment 3 days later with 2 suitcases and a look of determination that didn't quite hide her terror. She'd never lived anywhere that didn't have a doorman, never shared a bathroom, never woken up to the sound of his upstairs neighbors' screaming arguments at 2 in the morning. But she unpacked her clothes into half of Ethan's closet like she was planting a flag on foreign soil. And when Jamie asked why Victoria was staying over, she crouched down to his eye level and said, "Because your dad and I are figuring out if we work together. Is that okay with you?" Jamie studied her seriously. "Do you like pancakes?" "I've never made them. Dad makes really good ones, with chocolate chips." "Then I guess I should learn." That seemed to settle it for Jamie, but the rest of the world wasn't convinced so easily. The media had a field day when news broke that Victoria Sinclair had resigned from her own company and moved in with her supposed fake fiancé. The headlines ranged from sympathetic to savage. Business journals called it corporate suicide. Tabloids called it the greatest love story of the decade. Social media couldn't decide if Victoria was brave or insane. The consensus seemed to be that she'd either lost her mind or found it, depending on who you asked. The board at Sinclair Industries released a statement expressing their disappointment in Victoria's decision and announcing Marcus Chen as interim CEO. That one hurt. Ethan watched Victoria read the press release on her phone, her face carefully blank, and saw the moment it cracked through her defenses. "He gets it," she said quietly. "After everything, Marcus gets my father's company. I'm sorry." "Don't be. I made my choice." But her hands were shaking. Living together was harder than either of them expected. Not because they didn't love each other, that part was surprisingly easy, but because their lives didn't fit together like puzzle pieces. They clashed like mismatched fabric sewn together with uneven stitches. Victoria didn't know how to function in a space smaller than a hotel room. Ethan didn't know how to share his carefully constructed routine with someone who'd never had to think about grocery budgets or laundry schedules. She tried to help at the coffee shop and accidentally broke the espresso machine. He tried to understand her business calls with lawyers and accountants and felt like he was listening to a foreign language. 2 weeks in, they had their first real fight. It started over something stupid. Victoria had thrown away leftovers Ethan was planning to use for Jamie's lunch. But it escalated quickly, fueled by weeks of stress and unspoken fears. "You can't just throw things away without asking," Ethan said, trying to keep his voice level. "That was $3 worth of chicken. It was 2 days old. It could have made him sick." "It was fine. I grew up eating leftovers older than that." "Well, Jamie doesn't have to." "What's that supposed to mean?" Victoria's jaw tightened. "Nothing. I'm just saying he deserves better than what? Than the way I've been raising him?" Ethan's voice rose. "You've been here 2 weeks, Victoria. 2 weeks. Don't tell me how to take care of my son." "I'm not telling you how to—" "Yes, you are. You've been doing it since you moved in. Buying him new clothes because his old ones are worn. Suggesting a private school because the public one isn't good enough. Acting like everything about our life needs to be fixed." Victoria flinched. "That's not what I'm doing." "Then what are you doing?" "I'm trying to help." "We don't need your help. We were fine before you got here." The words landed like a slap. Victoria's expression shuddered. "I see," she said coldly. "I'm sorry for assuming I could be part of your life instead of just a guest in it." She grabbed her coat and left. Ethan stood in the kitchen surrounded by the ruins of their first fight, feeling like he'd just made a terrible mistake. When Jamie emerged from his room 20 minutes later, he looked confused. "Where did Victoria go?" "Out for a walk?" "Are you guys mad at each other?" "A little bit." "Because of the chicken?" Despite everything, Ethan smiled. "Not really. It's more complicated than that." "Are you going to say sorry?" "Yeah, buddy, I am." "Good, because I like her, and she makes you less sad." Ethan pulled his son into a hug and wondered when 5-year-olds had gotten so wise. Victoria didn't come back until after Jamie was asleep. When she finally slipped through the door, her eyes were red and her coat was damp from rain Ethan hadn't realized was falling. They stood in the narrow hallway, neither knowing how to start. "I'm sorry," Ethan said first. "What I said about you not being part of our life, that was wrong. You are part of it. I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Letting someone in. Trusting that you're not going to leave when things get hard." Victoria's expression softened. "I'm not Sarah." "I know, but she said she loved me too. And then one day she was done. So yeah, I'm scared that you'll wake up and realize this life is too small for you, that I'm too small for you. Ethan, and maybe I'm pushing you away before you can do it first. Which is unfair to you, I know that, but I don't know how to stop being afraid." Victoria closed the distance between them and took his face in her hands. "I'm terrified too. I walked away from everything I knew because I love you. And every day I wonder if I made a huge mistake, if I'm going to ruin your life the way I ruined mine." "You didn't ruin your life. I quit my job and moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with a man I've known for a month. By any rational measure, I've lost my mind." "Then we've both lost our minds." "Maybe." She smiled slightly. "But if we're going to be crazy, we might as well be crazy together." They kissed in the hallway, gentler this time, less desperate. When they pulled apart, Victoria rested her forehead against his. "I wasn't trying to fix your life," she said quietly. "I was trying to prove I could fit into it, that I could be useful, because if I'm not useful, what am I? You're the woman I love. That's enough." "Is it? Because I don't bring anything to this relationship except money, and you won't let me use that to help. Because I don't want you to feel like you have to buy your way into our lives." "I don't feel that way. I spent 30 years being valued for what I could provide. My father's legacy, my company's success, my strategic marriages and business connections. No one ever loved me for just being me." Her voice cracked. "I don't know how to be enough without bringing something valuable." Ethan's chest ached. "You are valuable. Not because of your money or your company, because you're kind and smart, and you actually listen when people talk, because you make terrible coffee but you keep trying, because Jamie asked you to read him a bedtime story last night and you did, all the voices, even though you had no idea what you were doing. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to be normal. Neither do I, so we'll figure it out together. What if we can't? Then we'll fail together, but at least we won't be alone. She kissed him again, and this time it felt like a promise. The next morning, Victoria woke up before Ethan and made pancakes. They were lumpy and slightly burned and absolutely nothing like the ones Ethan usually made. Jamie took one bite and looked at Victoria with diplomatic concern. These are different, he said carefully. Victoria laughed. Actually, laughed. They're terrible, I know. Maybe a little bit terrible. Want to help me make better ones? Jamie's face lit up. Can I? They spent the next hour in the kitchen making a mess and burning through half a box of pancake mix. Ethan watched from the doorway, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. When Victoria finally produced a pancake that was only slightly lopsided, Jamie cheered like she'd won an Olympic medal. You did it, he shouted. Victoria beamed. We did it. Watching them together, his son and the woman he loved, covered in flour and laughing, Ethan thought maybe they actually had a chance. But chance wasn't the same as certainty, and reality kept intruding. Money became an issue. Not because they didn't have it, Victoria had more money than Ethan could comprehend, but because Ethan refused to use it. He paid rent from the coffee shop income, bought groceries with his own money, split everything 50-50. Even though Victoria's 50 was pocket change, and his 50 was a calculation that sometimes meant choosing between fixing the shop's espresso machine and buying Jamie new shoes. This is ridiculous, Victoria said one night, watching Ethan do math on a napkin to figure out whether they could afford to replace the refrigerator that had started making ominous grinding sounds. I have money sitting in accounts doing nothing. Let me help. We're fine. The refrigerator is dying. I'll fix it. You don't know how to fix refrigerators. I'll learn. Victoria set down her wine glass with more force than necessary. Why are you being stubborn about this? Because if I let you pay for everything, what am I? Just another person using you for your money. You're not using me, we're partners. Partners split things equally. That's not how partnerships work. People bring different things. I have money, you have nothing. I have nothing. That's not true. Isn't it? Ethan gestured around the cramped apartment. Look at this place, Victoria. Look at my life. What do I bring to this relationship besides baggage and a kid and a coffee shop that barely breaks even? Victoria stood up, her eyes flashing. You bring love. You bring stability. You bring a home. Do you have any idea how much that's worth? Not as much as $1 billion company. I don't have that anymore. Because of me. No, because of me. Because I chose to walk away from something that was killing me slowly. You didn't make me do that. You just gave me a reason to want something different. She crossed to him, taking his hands. I'm not keeping score, Ethan. I'm not calculating what you bring versus what I bring. I'm here. Because I want to be. Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing something for me. Not for my father's legacy or the board's approval. Me. Ethan looked at their joined hands, his calloused and stained from work, hers smooth and elegant. They didn't match, nothing about them matched, but somehow they fit. I'm afraid of losing myself, he admitted quietly. If I let you take care of everything, I stop being Ethan who works hard and provides for his kid. I become Ethan who lives off his rich girlfriend, and I don't know how to be that person. Then don't be. Keep working, keep providing, but let me help sometimes. Not because you need me to, just because I want to. Because that's what people who love each other do. He wanted to argue, wanted to hold on to his pride and his independence and his carefully constructed walls. But looking at Victoria, at the woman who'd given up everything to stand in his tiny kitchen and argue about refrigerators, he realized she was right. Love wasn't about keeping score. It was about trust. Okay, he said. Okay? Yeah, okay, you can help with the refrigerator. Victoria smiled. Thank you. But I'm still paying rent. Deal. They bought a new refrigerator the next day. It was a small victory, but it felt like a step forward. 3 months in, they hit a bigger problem. Jamie started having nightmares, bad ones, where he'd wake up screaming about monsters and abandonment and losing his dad. Rachel thought it was delayed reaction to all the chaos. The child psychologist Ethan started taking him to said it was about fear of change. Either way, it broke Ethan's heart to watch his son spiral. "It's my fault," Victoria said one night after a particularly bad episode. "He's scared I'm going to leave like his mother did." "That's not, it is. Think about it. Sarah left. Then I showed up. Then we fought, and I left for a few hours. In his mind, people who love his dad always leave." Ethan hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. To Jamie's 5-year-old brain, love was unstable, temporary, something that disappeared when things got hard. "What do we do?" Ethan asked. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "We show him we're not leaving, both of us, no matter what." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we figure it out. Together." They started small. Victoria began reading to Jamie every night, the same stories in the same chair until it became routine. She showed up at his school pickup with Ethan, proving she was there even for the mundane parts. She learned to make his favorite foods: grilled cheese with the crust cut off, mac and cheese from the box because homemade was wrong somehow. She stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be present. And slowly, Jamie's nightmares lessened. He started smiling at Victoria without the wariness, started reaching for her hand when they crossed streets, started calling her V instead of Victoria, a nickname he'd invented that made her cry the first time he used it. "Why are you sad?" Jamie had asked, concerned. "I'm not sad. I'm happy." But you're crying." "Sometimes people cry when they're happy." "That's weird." "Yeah, it kind of is." The turning point came 4 months after Victoria moved in. Ethan's coffee shop was struggling. The vandalism had scared off some regulars, and the novelty crowd had moved on to the next viral story. He was 2 months behind on rent and seriously considering closing. He hadn't told Victoria because he didn't want to worry her, but she figured it out anyway. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, holding the eviction notice he'd tried to hide under a stack of bills. "Because it's not your problem." "Ethan, I mean it. This is my business, my failure. I'm not going to drag you down with it." Victoria set down the notice and looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "What if I could help? Not with money, with something else." "Like what?" "Knowledge, strategy. I ran a billion-dollar company for 10 years. I know how to save failing businesses." Ethan wanted to say no, wanted to hold on to his pride and his independence. But looking at the eviction notice, he realized pride wasn't going to keep his shop open. "What do you have in mind?" Victoria smiled, the sharp, competent smile he hadn't seen since she'd quit her company. "Let me show you." She spent the next week analyzing everything: foot traffic patterns, pricing strategies, supply costs, marketing opportunities. She didn't try to change what made the shop special. She just made it more efficient, more visible. She created a social media presence, reached out to local food bloggers, negotiated better rates with suppliers. Within a month, business was up 40%. Within 2 months, Ethan had paid off his back rent and had money left over. "You saved my shop," he said one night, looking at the week's receipts in disbelief. "We saved it. I just pointed out what you couldn't see because you were too close to it." "I couldn't have done this without you." "Yeah, you could have. It just would have taken longer." Victoria leaned against the counter. "This is what I'm good at, Ethan. Not pancakes or bedtime stories or any of the normal things that come naturally to you. But this, strategy and numbers and fixing broken things, this I can do. So let me bring what I'm good at to our partnership." Ethan looked at her, this brilliant, complicated woman who'd walked away from everything to stand in his coffee shop and crunch numbers on a laptop, and felt something shift into place. She was right. They didn't have to bring the same things to make this work. They just had to bring what they had. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." They kissed across the counter, and it tasted like possibility. But the biggest test came 6 months in, on an ordinary Tuesday morning. Ethan was making coffee when his phone rang. An unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Jennifer Martinez from Sinclair Industries. I'm calling on behalf of the board of directors." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Okay. We'd like to meet with you and Ms. Sinclair today, if possible, at our offices downtown." Why? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details over the phone, but I can assure you it's important. They went. Victoria wore a suit for the first time since moving in. Armor, Ethan realized, to face the people who'd let her walk away. They rode the elevator to the top floor in silence, Victoria's hand gripping his so tight it hurt. The boardroom was full, 12 men and women in expensive suits, all watching them with expressions ranging from hostile to curious. Marcus Chen sat at the head of the table, looking smug. "Victoria," he said, "thank you for coming." "What do you want, Marcus?" "To make you an offer." He slid a folder across the table. "We want you back as CEO, full reinstatement, with a 20% salary increase and a seat on the board that can't be challenged." Ethan's heart stopped. Victoria's face went carefully blank. "Why?" she asked. "Because in the 6 months since you left, our stock has dropped 32%. 3 major clients have jumped ship. The shareholders are calling for my resignation." Marcus smiled, but it looked painful. "Turns out I'm very good at running a tech company, but I'm terrible at running your father's legacy. You were right about that." Victoria opened the folder. Ethan watched her scan the terms, page after page of legal language that basically added up to everything she'd walked away from, handed back on a silver platter. "There's a condition," Marcus continued. "You come back alone. No distractions, no media circuses. No—" He glanced at Ethan with barely concealed disdain. "No complications." The room went silent. Victoria stared at the contract, her expression unreadable. Ethan felt the floor dissolving beneath him. This was it. The moment she'd choose between the life she'd built with him and the life she'd been born for. "No," Victoria said. Marcus blinked. "What?" "No, I'm not coming back." She closed the folder and slid it back across the table. "You're right. I was good at running this company, better than you'll ever be. But I was miserable. Every single day I felt like I was suffocating. And when I finally walked away, I learned something important." "What's that?" "That my father's dream doesn't have to be mine. That success isn't measured in stock prices and board approval. That I'd rather make pancakes in a tiny kitchen with people I love than sit in a boardroom pretending to care about quarterly earnings." She stood up, pulling Ethan with her. "So thank you for the offer, but I'm done being someone I'm not to make other people comfortable." She walked out. Ethan followed, his heart racing. They didn't speak until they were outside on the sidewalk, Victoria's hand still gripping his. "Are you sure about that?" Ethan asked carefully. "That was a lot of money, a lot of power." "I'm sure." "Victoria, do you know what I've learned in the last 6 months?" She turned to face him, and her eyes were bright. "I've learned that I like working at your coffee shop better than running a company. I like reading bedtime stories to Jamie. I like our tiny apartment with the leaky sink and the neighbor who screams at 3 a.m. I like making terrible pancakes and arguing about refrigerators and figuring out how to fit my life into yours." Her voice cracked. "I like being happy, Ethan, and I can't remember the last time I was happy before I met you." Ethan pulled her close. "I love you. I love you too, even when you're stubborn and won't let me buy you things. Even when you reorganize my kitchen without asking, especially then." They stood on the sidewalk holding each other while the city moved around them, business people hurrying to meetings they'd once been part of, taxis honking at traffic, life continuing like nothing profound had just happened. But something profound had happened. Victoria had chosen him, chosen them, chosen the small, messy, imperfect life they were building together over everything she'd been raised to value. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Ethan made a decision. He closed the coffee shop early and transformed it into something else, something that had been living in the back of his mind for weeks. He hung white lights from the ceiling, brought in flowers from the bodega on the corner, set up candles on every surface until the whole place glowed warm and soft. When Victoria arrived, confused by his text asking her to meet him, she stopped in the doorway and stared. "What is this?" "Remember when I proposed to you the first time?" Ethan asked, walking to her. "In a restaurant full of strangers with a ring I'd never planned to use again because I couldn't stand watching you hurt?" "I remember. That proposal was about saving you from embarrassment. It was an act of kindness from a stranger." He took her hands. "This one is different." Victoria's breath caught. Ethan! He got down on one knee. The same knee as that first night, in the same position, but everything about this moment was different, real, earned. Victoria Sinclair, you're the smartest, strongest, most frustrating person I've ever met. You make terrible coffee and reorganize things without permission, and you gave up everything to live in my cramped apartment with my kid and my baggage and my broken refrigerators, and somehow, his voice broke. Somehow you make all of it better just by being there. Tears streamed down her face. I'm not asking you to marry me because cameras are watching or because we need to save face, he continued. I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you in it, because you're not just my fake fiancé anymore. You're my partner, my best friend. The person I want to build a life with, not because it makes sense, but because it makes me happy. He pulled out the ring, the same white gold band with the small diamond that had started all of this. So will you marry me? For real this time? Victoria dropped to her knees in front of him, laughing and crying at the same time. You're insane. Is that a yes? Yes. Obviously yes. How could I say anything else? He slid the ring onto her finger. This time it fit perfectly. Victoria had quietly had it resized months ago, when she'd decided she wanted to wear it forever, whether he asked her to or not. They kissed on the floor of the coffee shop surrounded by candlelight and flowers and the life they'd accidentally built together. I can't believe you did this, Victoria said, pulling back to look at him. This place? It's beautiful. Had some help. Dev and Rachel have been setting up for the last 3 hours. They knew? Everyone knew. Jamie designed the flowers arrangement. It's crooked. He's 5. It's perfect. They stayed there on the floor for a long time, just holding each other. Eventually, Victoria said, I have a confession. What? I bought a wedding dress 3 months ago, just in case. Ethan laughed. Seriously? I knew you'd ask eventually. You're too sentimental not to. Fair point. When should we do this? The wedding? Whenever you want. Victoria thought about it. Small, just family and people we actually like. No cameras, no media, no performance. Perfect. Really? Yeah, I'm done with the circus. I just want to marry you. Even though I can't make pancakes? Especially because you can't make pancakes. They got married 6 weeks later in the same coffee shop where Ethan had proposed. Rachel officiated because she'd gotten ordained online specifically for this occasion. Jamie was the ring bearer and took his job so seriously he walked at a pace that made the 5-minute ceremony stretch to 15. Dev was the best man. Andrea, Victoria's former assistant, who'd quit the day Victoria did and now helped manage the coffee shop's social media, was the maid of honor. 20 people total. No photographers, no viral moments, just 2 people promising to love each other for real in front of the people who actually mattered. Victoria wore the dress she'd bought 3 months early. Ethan wore the same tuxedo from their first fake engagement. When they exchanged rings, the same ring that had traveled from Ethan's grandmother to his failed first marriage to a fake proposal to this moment, it felt like coming full circle. I love you, Victoria said when it was her turn for vows, and I promise to keep making terrible pancakes until I get it right. I promise to let you be stubborn about money sometimes, and to only reorganize the kitchen when you're not looking. I promise to read bedtime stories and silly voices and show up at school pickup and be present for all the small, ordinary moments that make life worth living. Her voice cracked. I spent 30 years chasing my father's dream. But you taught me that the best dreams are the ones we build ourselves. So thank you for seeing me, for choosing me, for showing me what love actually looks like. Ethan's vows were simpler. I promise to let you help. To trust that you're not leaving even when things get hard. To believe that I'm enough for you exactly as I am. And I promise to love you, not the billionaire version or the perfect version, but the real you. The one who cries at bedtime stories and argues about refrigerators and makes me laugh when I forget how. You're it for me, Victoria. Always have been since the moment you said yes in that restaurant. They kissed as husband and wife while their tiny audience cheered. Jamie shouted, "Gross!" but he was smiling. Rachel cried. Dev took photos on his phone that would never make it to TMZ but would live in their wedding album forever. The reception was cake from the bakery down the street and champagne from the bodega and dancing to music from Dev's playlist. Nothing about it was fancy or perfect or Instagram-worthy. It was just real. Later, after everyone had left and Jamie had fallen asleep at Rachel's apartment, Ethan and Victoria sat in the quiet coffee shop holding hands across the table where they'd had their first real conversation months ago. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria said. "Always. When you proposed to me that first night, I thought you were either crazy or cruel. Who proposes to a stranger? What kind of person does that? Someone who didn't think it through? Someone who cared more about a stranger's pain than his own dignity." She squeezed his hand. "You saved me that night, not from embarrassment, from myself, from a life where I'd convinced myself that loneliness was strength and that caring about people was weakness. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe, but it would have taken longer, and I would have been miserable for all of it." She paused. "I spent my whole life trying to be valuable, trying to prove I deserved the space I took up in the world. And then I met you, and you loved me for existing, not for what I could provide or achieve, just for being. That's what love is supposed to be. I know that now, but I didn't then." Ethan thought about how far they'd come, from strangers in a restaurant to partners in a marriage, from performing for cameras to building something private and real. It hadn't been smooth. They'd fought and stumbled and nearly given up more times than he could count, but they'd chosen each other. Every single day they'd woken up and chosen each other. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving up the company, the money, that whole life?" Victoria looked around the coffee shop, at the mismatched furniture and the chipped paint and the crooked flower arrangement Jamie had made. She looked at the ring on her finger, worn now from months of washing dishes and making coffee and living an ordinary life. Then she looked at Ethan. "Not even once," she said. Because here's what Ethan had learned in the months since that first insane proposal. Love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect moments or fairy tale endings. It was about showing up, about choosing someone every day even when it was hard, about building a life together one small decision at a time, pancakes and refrigerators and bedtime stories and all the tiny ordinary moments that add up to something extraordinary. He'd learned that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone in. Trust them not to break you, even though you'd been broken before. Believe that you were enough exactly as you were, without needing to change or hide or perform. And he'd learned that the best love stories weren't the ones that looked perfect from the outside. They were the messy, complicated, imperfect ones where two people saw each other, really saw each other, and decided that was enough. That being known was worth more than being impressive. That being loved for your flaws was more valuable than being admired for your achievements. Victoria had walked away from a billion-dollar empire to make terrible pancakes in his tiny kitchen. Not because she needed saving, not because she'd lost her mind, but because she'd finally found what she'd been missing her whole life. A home. Not a place. A person. A family. A reason to stop performing and start living. And if that wasn't worth everything, Ethan didn't know what was. They locked up the coffee shop and walked home through the Brooklyn streets, past the bodega where they bought flowers, past the park where Sarah had met Jamie, past all the ordinary landmarks of their ordinary life. Victoria leaned against him, tired and happy, and exactly where she wanted to be. "Hey," Ethan said as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. "Yeah? I'm glad I proposed to you," Victoria smiled. "Which time?" "Both times. All the times. Every version of us that led to this one." "Me too. Even the fake one?" "Especially the fake one. Because it turned into something real." They reached their door. Inside, their tiny apartment waited, cramped and imperfect and full of life. Tomorrow, Ethan would make pancakes the right way while Victoria watched and learned. Jamie would build towers with his blocks and knock them down and build them again. They'd argue about something small and make up before lunch. Victoria would help at the coffee shop, and Ethan would let her because he'd finally learned that accepting help wasn't weakness. They'd live. Just live. In all the small, ordinary, beautiful ways that made life worth living. And outside that little apartment in Brooklyn, the city would keep moving. News cycles would shift to the next scandal. People would forget about the billionaire CEO who'd walked away from everything. The story would become just another strange anecdote. Remember when that woman quit her company for some random coffee shop guy? Whatever happened to them? But inside, safe from all of it, Ethan and Victoria would know the truth. They'd found something more valuable than money or fame or public approval. They'd found each other. And in a world that constantly demanded performance and perfection, they'd built something honest and messy and real. That was the story no camera could capture. The one that mattered more than any viral moment or tabloid headline. Two broken people who'd accidentally saved each other by being brave enough to say yes when logic screamed no. By choosing love over comfort. By believing that sometimes the craziest decisions turn out to be the most right ones. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.